change is the thing. A story is change. I start at the end. I want to know where the story is going.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the special conversation that Screencraft is having with Chris Sanders. We're so excited, and we're honored to have the talented Chris here to discuss the adaptation of literary sensation Peter Brown's beloved award-winning #1 New York bestseller, The Wild Robots. With educational resources, industry insights, and direct connections to agents, managers, and producers, Screencraft has helped writers advance their careers through a range of opportunities, including our contest coverage and mentorship programs. A powerful story about the discovery of self, a thrilling examination of the bridge between technology and nature, and a moving exploration of what it means to be alive and connected to all living things. The Wild Robot is written and directed by the overly talented three-time Oscar nominee, incredible Chris Sanders. And Chris has also written and directed DreamWorks Animation's How to Train Your Dragon, the CROODS, and Disney's Lilo and Stitch, which he also voiced Stitch, and is produced by Jeff Harmon. The Wild Robot stars the Academy Award winner Lupita Nyong'o, Pedro Pascal, Catherine O'Hara, among other star-studded talents. So today we're going to chat with Chris about the process of literary adaptation. Thank you so much for your time today, Chris.
Thank you.
So I'll jump right in. The Wild Robot, amazing film. I had such a fun time watching it. It's such a unique premise. What drew you to adapt the story into a film, and what aspects of the book resonated most with you as a writer?
I got lucky in my timing. I dropped by DreamWorks to see if there was anything that I could work on. I was looking for my next gig, and it was all the emotional things that were within the story that I really was gravitating to. The characters were unique, not to mention, not the least of which is just a story about a robot. I love robot movies, and that was at the core of this whole story. So that's what got me interested and excited me about the project.
That's amazing. And the film features, like you said, the robot Rod, who learns to survive in the wilderness. How did you approach blending technology with nature in both the narrative and the visual aspects of the film?
There is actually quite literally a blending. As you can see from the style of the film, it's unique. It is a never before done technique that we created at DreamWorks specifically for this film, and everything is hand painted. Every surface and every single character is hand painted surfaces. So the feathers on the birds and the fur on the animals is done by hand. The one exception would be Roz, only when she first arrives. So at the very beginning of the movie, when Roz is first moving to the island, she has a CG surface, a traditional CG surface. And as time goes on, and it's a feature of the story, is that she gets wear and tear, and she becomes more like an inhabitant, a denizen of the island. We replace the CG surface with hand-painted surfaces, and we have about, I'd say, between 15 and 20 versions of her as she begins to develop more and more wear, so that by mid-movie, she has an entirely hand-painted surface as well. And so she is literally fused visually with the rest of the style of the island.
I love that. And I love that you pointed out that she eventually get hand painted, because when I was watching it, I noticed, I was like, it's something very different about this film visually. And it's the hand painting. It's just so bright and vibrant and beautiful. So I love that. How involved were you in shaping the character development of Roz, and what key traits did you want to make sure were conveyed in her journey of self-discovery?
The character development, literally her voice was a collaboration between myself and Lupita Nyong'o. And she took the lead in, of course, shaping her own character's voice, which was no simple task. It was an ongoing thing. And we started just by talking about, how does Roz think? What is she all about? What exactly is her programming? And that led the way to finding the sound of her voice. And you might notice that her voice changes from the beginning to the middle and end of the film. We have, I would say, 3 distinct phases that she goes through. And she begins with this, I would call it a programmed optimism, where she's hello, and she's in this like, this more sort of like I describe it as a more tense kind of excited zone with her voice, and then as she goes through the story, that relaxes and becomes more natural, and it becomes very much her voice. It's all her voice, if you know what I mean, but it's she's affecting it more, at the beginning. So she adapts and she changes as she becomes a more dimensional being. And I don't remember the second part of your question, but feel free to ask it again.
Oh yeah, how were you bringing about her key traits that were conveyed in her self-discovery?
Yeah, her key trait is kindness, and enthusiasm, and a kindness and an honesty, and that stays consistent throughout. She is a character that changes the world around her. She's becoming more dimensional, but I would actually say that she doesn't really change because she's a very powerful character. The very definition of a story is change. It's a character that changes the world around them or changes through a journey changed by the world. But I would say she is more she's more stable because her nature doesn't change. Her voice does, but her nature doesn't change. So yeah, so she changes the culture of the island, not on purpose. It's just by sheer force of her kindness.
I love that kindness. And since you have such a vast experience in animation, were there any moments from your previous work that helped shape this script?
Oh my goodness. Well, absolutely. That's a really good question. On Lilo and Stitch, I learned from Alan Silvestri, the composer, that music can do some of the heaviest lifting narratively. And ever since then, Dean DeBlois, my co-writer, co-director on several projects, and I have built what I would say is like houses for music within the story and within the script. So there are places where dialogue ceases and music steps in as the main voice of the film. And that is certainly on display in this particular movie, more so than any other I've ever worked on. So huge parts of this film are carried by Chris Bowers, our composer.
Nice. I love that. And in your previous work, staying on that topic, it featured a lot of themes of family, belonging, identity that often emerged. Do these themes play a role in The Wild Robot as much as your other works?
I like these kinds of stories, and I think it's one of those things that drew me to this one. So yeah, families are things that you can that build themselves. A family can be a group of friends. A family is what you make it, and very much so in this story. I would say that like a good example would be Fink the fox, voiced by Pedro Pascal, and he's a character that begins by taking advantage of Roz. He understands that she doesn't exactly know what's going on, so he leverages that into like feeding himself and housing himself and doing things for himself. But he also reveals that he's a rather damaged character, and he and Roz and Bright Bill eventually become a family. I think before they even realize it, but eventually that goes on to extend to the rest of the creatures of the island, and the whole island becomes a family. Roz changes everything. I think that the animals on this island were very, very lucky that Roz came along when she did.
Yeah, for sure. And I hope this isn't like a spoiler question. I'll try to ask it in a unique way.
Ask carefully.
Yeah,
Be careful the way you
So
craft your question carefully.
because this is what I noticed when the other robots were on the island,
Hmm.
did they fail their mission, or were they I guess a mock-up to Roz being Roz?
Are you talking? I love that we're talking about this in code. Are you talking about the other robots that were similar to Roz, or the ones that were very different? The ones
The
that,
ones that were similar that were on the island.
right. That's a good question. It's part of the book. In the very opening of Peter Brown's wonderful book, 5 robots fall off of a container ship, and the crates float towards this island. And one by one, they are dashed upon the rocks and smashed. one last container lands just by happenstance perfectly with a wave and is set down gently and survives. And that's the setup to that part of the film that we're talking about.
Nice. Okay. Love that. Love that. Okay. Great. And so, what do you hope audiences, especially children, take away from the Wild Robot? Is there anything in particular with messaging that you want to resonate?
Peter Brown revealed to us in our very first conversation that the guiding principle that was on his mind as he wrote the book was the idea that kindness could be a survival skill. And that's the thing that we've been talking about with Roz. And that's the thing that really struck me and stayed with me about the story, is that cooperation and kindness is a powerful thing. It's not a weakness. It's a great strength. The other one that exists in the story is the idea that we may have to change our programming at some point. We are all creatures of habit. We grow up and we learn certain things and we are a certain way. And there's probably a time or two or maybe more that we may have to change that thinking. And again, that's a strength. I think being inflexible is not always a good thing. It's okay to bend and change and learn. And I love that part of it. I mean, that's something that we've all I've experienced, I should say. I don't know, I wouldn't speak for everyone, but I'll speak for myself that I've experienced that.
Yeah, I love that. And with writing the script, did you collaborate a lot with Peter Brown in the initial adaptation stages?
I wrote solo, but I always talked to Peter about why he did things and what was inside. And he was really, really helpful. He explained to me what a Rosm robot is. A Rosm robot is a helper robot. It's human. Why is it humanoid? Why does it do what it does? And he revealed all those things to me, and it really aided me in understanding the character.
Yeah, I love that. And final question, what advice would you give to aspiring writers who want to break into animation or even the family genre?
As for just storytelling, change is the thing. A story is change. I start at the end. I want to know where the story is going. You want a good satisfying change. Tonally, I think making a film is the same as writing for an audience, of a broad audience. You don't have to write down. And not everybody has to understand every little thing. Sometimes it's okay for a kid or even an adult to have to look something up and push and let them reach a little bit. But I work not to exclude. I never try to exclude anyone. I think that I never target anyone, but I try to keep everyone. Does that make sense? Okay, I'm like getting into it like, be quiet, Chris, you've said too much. Yeah, work not to exclude. Yeah.
I love that. Thank you so much, Chris. This was wonderful speaking with you. The Wild Robot was a fantastic film, very emotional. I loved it. And for all watching, remember to go see The Wild Robot in theater September 27th. Thank you so much for your time, Chris.
Thank you.